Welcome everybody. This is our first panel with our WITI Wellbeing instructors. We have classes 5 times a week, and then we have special events as well. This Friday coming up right after our wellbeing class with Fred Sugerman, we have a special event that we did last month called Race Relay. Actually, it's called Business Not As Usual, but it's by Race Relay, and they're an organization that creates a safe space to talk about race. So with everything going on, we really felt like we had to put something out there. So join us this Friday. And then we have other special events that we'll be getting into a little bit later. But the intention for our Wellbeing Center is a place where you can use different modalities to basically get to the place of centeredness, groundedness, and presence, because from there, that's where all the decisions, the mindful decisions and the mindful choices are made. So when we're frazzled, doing a million things, or our brain is in one area trying to make decisions, from there is not always, you know, it doesn't benefit everyone. So that's what we're doing with the Wellbeing Center, is helping you get to a place of mindfulness. So we have classes in the mornings, in the afternoons, in the evenings, to kind of set your self, get balanced. So check it out. It's free for all WITI members. And for the summit, we have a special wellbeing page that has our instructors' videos. We have one from each instructor, including Dr. Maher, Alicia Maher, who is a holistic psychiatrist based out of Santa Monica, California. And she talks about the neuroscience of getting from one part of your brain into the other part of the brain. So check out those videos. You can access it when you go into Wellbeing in the summit that way. And also, we just launched a art and tech gallery, so check that out too. So with that, talking about mindfulness and groundedness, we're gonna start with Fred Sugerman leading us for a couple of minutes to a practice, and then we're going to introduce everybody and have a conversation. If you have questions, put them in the chat. And we can also, you know, you can raise your hand too later. So take it away, Fred.
Thank you, Anna. So we don't really need to be neuroscientists to know that if an infant is inconsolable or needs something, we do something like this with them. We rock. So I'm going to invite all of us to just create a very soft, very small, very gentle rocking motion in your body. And if you want to see me right now, or if you want to see anybody else that's on the screen right now, please, in fact, it's sort of nice. We have this opportunity. If you mirror or reflect somebody else's movement, something happens in the way of connection in our brainwave patterns, or something that humans find a bit consoling and comforting to be with another. So creating a very soft, gentle rocking or swaying motion. And I'm going to let my eyes close for a moment, and I'm going to invite you to do the same, if that's all right with you. And as your eyes are closed, if that feels safe enough, you don't have to close your eyes, but if you're willing to, I invite you to notice as you close your eyes what you become aware of. The sounds maybe in your space. I'm hearing birds and traffic outside my window. The sounds that you can hear, maybe maybe thoughts come to you. Very likely you're thinking something. So we're just going to spend another minute or so very softly, gently swaying or rocking. taking notice of whatever thoughts are occurring for you right now, whatever sounds you might be hearing. And I invite you to notice your breath, the feeling of your breath. You can very likely tell if your breath is on its way out right now or on its way in right now. In fact, if you're willing to, I invite you to follow your breath, your next out breath, until it's entirely out. There's no pushing necessary, just a normal breath. And then notice as your breath comes in, you can feel your breath coming in. And continue thinking what you're thinking, noticing what you're thinking, listening to whatever it is you're listening to, feeling your breath. And for another minute or so, I'm going to invite you to very, very, very incrementally, just a little bit, increase the range of your rocking or swing, or let it become smaller. So I'm going to invite you to do more or less rocking or swing, whatever feels most easy for you. A little bit more or a little bit less range of your swing or rocking as you continue to notice what you're thinking. Feel your breath, listening to whatever it is you're hearing. Thinking whatever it is you're thinking, what pictures or images are crossing your mind's eye right now. What can you hear right now? And can you feel your breath? And adjusting, if you're sitting, I'm going to ask you to make a minor adjustments to the way you're sitting so you're as comfortable and easy as possible. If you're standing, the same thing, shuffling your feet a little bit or standing up a little bit straighter. Yeah. Take a moment, please, and find a pause in your rocking or swing, intentionally initiating less rocking or swing with your eyes closed, if that's all right. Feel your breath. Just to get us started in a really good way, I'm going to invite you to very gently let your eyes open. And to whatever degree it feels good for you, I'm going to invite you to see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people, as if it was all right to look at each other. And of course, with that, if you're on the screen, very likely people are seeing you. And if that's okay with you, then let it be okay with you. If it's not, you can hide out. We all know how to hide, even when it appears like we're being seen. We've all been alone quite a bit, or most of us have. I'm going to invite you to just notice that something happens in your body when you see another or others. Cool thing about Zoom is you're never certain if you're actually looking at who you think or they're looking at you. But, all right, thank you very much, everybody. Welcome.
Thank you, Fred. That was great.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, it was all, I had a minute of, oh, we're on a panel, you know, I forgot it for a sec. So, okay, I'm going to go around, do a brief introduction, and I thought I would have you guys, I'll introduce you, and then you could say, you know, for a minute, like what you do, about your work. Does that sound good? Okay. So first of all, we have Alyse Hart. She is Freebird Mojo is her company, and she teaches at the Wellbeing Center 3 times a week. She does a morning class, afternoon class, and an evening class. And maybe you guys have were there for her stretch break or have come to another session. It's Qigong and energy management. And Alyse, if you want to say a brief intro to the work you do.
Well, I'm so happy to be here with so many others. I teach Qigong, which found me, and I love to be able to play with being able to shift energy. Qi means energy, and to be able to move to come to the best emotional profile, best energetic profile, so that winds of worry and chaos are going to be all around us. How do we come back to center quickly? And so I had been in the corporate world for many, many years. And I love the idea of marrying the right energy for the right job, soft energy for collaboration, you know, when we're with people, and how to find that very focused energy so that you can get things done on deadline and all of that. So I'm marrying mindful practices along with the practicality of business. So have studied with Fred, and have been challenged also with autoimmune Epstein-Barr for my whole life. So I like the structure of being able to get back in charge and read my energy, and now bring it to others.
Thank you, Alyse.
Mhm.
Next, we have Lotem Porat. She teaches Wednesdays at 4 Pacific. And she just has a wonderful way of guiding us through really easy, simple movements, but that make a huge difference. And Lotem, if you could talk about your work and what you do, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's been just really great to see so many different kinds of people coming together from different places and doing these practices. I teach yoga and meditation, and I have found that it's just really helped me in my life in getting into my body and relaxing my nervous system. It's helped a lot with anxiety and depression and just not feeling connected to myself. And so I feel like it's just a way to find calm in the craziness, and it ends up affecting everything out there in the world. And I like to see it as having a time to check in with ourselves, almost like we would with a friend, just wanting to know how they're doing and really wanting to know the highs and the lows. And so I feel like when we come to do yoga or meditation or any mindful practice, it's really a time for us to spend quality time with ourselves. And with that attention, things begin to free up and find more balance and centeredness. So there's a lot more, but I think I'll stop there.
Yeah. And Lotem has a class today at 4 o'clock. So to end the summit, you can go to speed networking, or you can come to yoga, your choice.
Or both.
Or both, yes, that's true.
Right. Yeah. Because we're going to do 15 minutes, and then you can leave if you want to, and then we're going to do another 15 minutes if you keep. It's a half-hour class, but you can leave 15 minutes in. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, and next we have Fred Sugerman, who just led us through that meditation. So Fred does mindful movement. Medicine Dance is his company, and he has, what should I say? He does workshops and he does private classes, and he helps you get in touch with your body through movement. So he's said many times, I think I can quote him, where meditation didn't quite work for him. And what he did was bring movement into his meditation. So part of what you guys experienced today is just a part of it, because then he leads us through different parts of the body and different movements incorporated with that. So, and then Fred, if you want to say a little bit about your modality.
Thank you, Anna. I like what you said better than what I could say about myself. Thank you. No time I want to apologize for dropping out. I did the #1 Zoom. No, I let my power run out for a second. It wasn't anything that you were saying. So Medicine Dance was created 20-something years ago. It's a grandchild of a motorcycle accident I had when I was in my early 20s, and was forced to figure out on my own that the only person I could really depend upon to heal myself was me, because the medical community was about to give up on my leg, and I wasn't willing to do that at the time. Of course, I now know that will isn't everything, but I did turn to yoga and different forms of meditation and dance at that time, a long time ago. And I was also an actor and a dancer. So through the performing arts, through a motorcycle accident, I discovered that I really need a practice where I can be empowered to work with my energy, very much in the same way that Alyse works with Qigong and Lotem works with yoga. I work with energy. I work with the awareness. I love, Anna, how you, I consider myself a failed meditator for many years. I was thinking that I was supposed to not think, that I had to stop my thinking and I could sit still and feel peaceful afterwards. Didn't quite get it for probably decades, but somebody turned me on to the idea someday that I could do this and follow the sensations of that, or I could move really slow, or I could do any number of different forms of movement and find a way of feeling my body and coming to a place. When I got there, I knew it was what I wanted in meditation. Nobody can ever describe what the end result is in a long meditative practice, but I knew that I was getting what I needed. And I know now for me that I'm so grateful that I have a practice. The outer circumstances that we're all living through are so extreme now. I feel blessed beyond belief that I've been practicing for a while and that I have the tools to share that practice with. Thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you, Fred. And new to our Wellbeing Center is Kim Linton. We met Kim just a couple months ago when all of this was happening, and we're really inspired by the work she does. And what she does is mindful leadership is kind of how I would call it. But I'll let her explain a little bit.
I really like that. I think I need to adopt that into my vocabulary. I am a facilitator and a leadership expert, and don't let my great skin and my great genes fool you. I am a millennial, and I also, Alyse, you mentioned you were in the corporate space. I didn't know that about you, but I also did the same thing. I was groomed by my two military parents to basically rise in the ranks in the corporate space. And what I've learned is there's nothing wrong with that, but it just didn't work for me. So what I tell people is, as a facilitator and leadership expert, I help hold the ladder steady at the bottom while others climb up. And I was recently certified by Dr. Brene Brown in her Dare to Lead work over the last summer. And first of all, if you're a fan, you know her work. She is excellent. She is just who she appears to be in like her Netflix special and TED Talks, and in her books. She's just like that in person. And she studies vulnerability, empathy, shame, and how those things show up at work. So as a facilitator, classically trained, again, in sort of how to help teams work better together, I could create a space for work to get done. But if people couldn't step into that space comfortably, boldly, in an innovative, modern way, then that space was meaningless. So my combination of agility and teamwork with the daring leadership step is what I do now. So I'm excited to be a part of this group. Y'all are well established, and thank you for welcoming me.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, that's great. And all of our facilitators, you can access their information through the WITI website to contact them, to work with them individually, to hire them for your companies, and also to read about them and their accolades. I didn't have, you know, everyone is an accomplished person in their own right. And so go to the website and read all about them. With that, Daniel, do you want to start the Q&A, or not the Q&A, but the questions to our panelists?
Sure. So Fred, you in the intro, you talked the intro meditation grounding exercise. You talked about more, and at a certain point you said do more or less. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've taken a lot of your classes, and you do that a lot. Could you talk about why you do that and where you're getting to with that?
Yeah, thank you. Everything I do is meant to bring the participants' attention to the present moment. So if I'm creating a pattern of movement that's an impulse from my own body, I use the word swing or rocking. So that was a cue to do something like this. I modeled it. So when I ask you to do a little bit more or a little bit less, it requires the attention to become even more focused on what one is doing. So it's a little bit of a trick. And the trick that I use is a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. It takes even more attention to do something subtle and incremental and small. So I ask for a little bit more or a little bit less. And again, every word I use in a private or group session is meant to require the participants' mind's attention to be very focused on the feeling of the body. I would say that's my best shot right now.
I have to say, Fred, after you led us through that, I didn't even expect that, but I was way more calm. So, I mean, I would do that every day.
You can, just do it.
Right.
I will.
I think that's a Nike commercial now. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about doing it? You know, anyway, I mean, that should be like a phrase. Anyway.
Well, actually, I'm gonna feed off of that, Anna, because you sparked something for me. And tell me again, Daniel, if I'm getting down the wrong path here. But I know you have questions for us with kind of the state of the world right now, with the pandemic, with the racial inequities, and all the things going on. Doing something, I think, has been top of mind for me because we talk a lot. And a lot of my work is centered around skill building. And I assume, I don't know all of you quite very well, but a lot of what y'all do is movement and actual like energy movement, and it's doing something. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the transition or the elevation from just talking about something to doing something.
Yeah. Would you like to do that right now? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, yeah, let's go.
Okay, well, go ahead. Let's talk about it, because that was actually one of the things that I find, like with, you know, I've worked with Fred for 15 years now. I actually met him through Alyse at a WITI conference. I met Alyse at a WITI conference, and then I met Fred through Alyse. But anyway, the idea of doing these practices, and it's, you know, it's great for the time we're doing it, and then we have to step out into the world and deal with a million messages and all the, you know, for me at least, it feels like an onslaught of information. And so it is, I would like, and anyone, Kim, if you could address this first, and then anyone who wants to chime in, please do, bringing these practices into the real world and using them like for a meeting or a difficult conversation or whatever you were headed toward, Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. My work is definitely more tactical in nature. I I recommend a lot of things you can do in front of people, which requires a lot of vulnerability and work on your own part. I think the mindfulness, I have a question in my head, and I'd love to hear from some of the other experts in that field. Where does mindfulness move from just yourself to external? But for me, Daniel, to answer your question about a tool or something that I use in front of people, it comes from Brené's work, and it's the technique of saying to yourself, either internally or externally, the story I'm making up is. So think about all the work that you've done, either in a project now or with other people, or even with your relationships, kids, spouses, partners, whatever. All the confabulations, like the conjecture that we make up because of only having part of the story. So for me, mindfulness at work or in my home, I don't really separate it, but it's all about being aware of when I'm triggered by something. Like, am I really making this up, or is this really happening? And then having the conversation either with myself or with that person. This is the story I'm making up. Is that really happening or not? And then what the result is either my worst fears are realized, or I'm completely wrong. But regardless, there's a space created to have that conversation, as opposed to it just stewing inside of me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Would anyone else like to follow that up?
I would love to hear from all of our panelists that same question. You know, what tool, Alyse, now would you recommend using in the real world? Yeah.
You know, so one of the things that just being more aware does for you, or does for me, is I can feel the symptoms of, like, just when I'm getting less breath, when my shoulders are up here, redundant thoughts. All of that stuff means I'm not bringing my personal best to anything. I'm just sort of, right? So I can catch that quicker now. And for me, one of the symptoms is lack of breath. My breath gets super shallow. And that happens for a lot of people. We get shallow and really small, the chest caves in. So I find that if I can begin, I'll just tell a little short story. When people used to say, take a few breaths, if you have high anxiety, taking those breaths and doing them incorrectly, like too fast, too intense, you'll be dizzy. I've done that before interviews many years ago. But if you can regulate and just begin to take those long, slow, deep breaths, and now I have about 20 different variations of breath that I use, and I can do that for a minute or two. It's the first layer of coming back to myself. And that's really helpful. When I'm back to myself, I can also be engaged with all of you. If I am so tense and so crazy that all I'm doing is thinking about, oh my God, what do I look like right now? Is that hair behind my ear? Is that showing, you know what I mean? Then I'm not bringing my best self into any work situation. So I'm all about, like, the breath is first and some movement, and flowing and kind of lasered, and just being able to hold focus. Soft and not is one of the tricks, you know, one of many that I find I use. And I need something quick. You know, we all have practices of some sort. You know, even thinking about negative stuff again and again and again, you're meditating. You're just meditating about weeds, you know, not seeds, but you're putting your attention on something that's erroneous. So learning how to use, like, the questions Kim just said about, is that a story or something like that? If I'm just coming back and going, seeds, not weeds, you know, how do I choose a better reality? It's not skipping over feeling crappy, because all of us are having huge emotions or none at all. You know, we're having a lot of stuff as we see what's going on. But now coming back to terra firma, which is me, you know, like being able to self-soothe and comfort myself, is really important. And I don't know if that just answered the question, but it's breath and it's movement and it's mind, because what affects the energy is four things. It's the things that you think, it's how you move, how you feel, and what you eat. There's probably more, but that's kind of where I go on it. And so we have say in how we feel, and I want to pick a better reality most of the time, because it's not helpful otherwise. I am my worst self. And so being able to do that personal leadership or self-mastery, you know, many of us have been on that trip for a very long time. And then we find, you know, our own blend of what works. But it's imperative right now. You know, otherwise we're just tossed all over the place by every toxic thought and the news and the noise. And we're needed right now, especially everybody at WITI, smartest people in the world here. It's up to us. So.
Yeah. And thank you, Alyse. That was great. And Fred, it occurs to me when I think about the workshops we do, the non-performance workshops, that's one of the places that we, where you have us bring, well, at least for me, I get to practice being myself in front of people. And also when we're doing the partner work in a regular group class or any of our classes. Could you talk about taking that? Yeah.
So Kim, I really appreciate you naming the need for those of us who spend a lot of time practicing with ourselves in a non-doing way, which is essential, I believe, for our well-being. But how do we bring that into action? I'm going to invite everybody who's sitting here listening and seeing anybody else to go back to a very gentle swaying or rocking motion. And this time with your eyes open again. They're probably open, I know they were open a little bit. But pick one person in the group. And again, that person won't necessarily know that you're seeing them. Use their eyes if you want. If that's not comfortable, just look at their shoulders or their forehead or their cheeks or whatever. And see if you can see another person and feel your own breath at the same time. Make any adjustments in your shoulders or your belly, the position of your arms. Find as comfortable a place as possible, even more easy and comfortable way of sitting or standing. So continuing to see another person and feel your own breath. And allowing your body to continuously adjust in very microscopic ways into some sort of ease or comfort for you, as much comfort as possible. Some of us are in a lot of pain for various reasons all the time. Sometimes that pain doesn't go away at the least painful way of sitting or standing right now. So what we do with a lot of our time in answer to the question, what about taking this into action, is studying ourselves as we are before we meet another, with another. And we simply take time, quite a bit of time in my workshops, to work with partners in small groups of exploring the possibility that I can continue to be my best self. Kim, I love that you've met Brene Brown, and she named vulnerability as such a huge component of what I believe is the most powerful force on earth. If I can retain a sense of my best self, my essential self, myself unmasked and unarmored, if I can retain just a little bit of a sense of that and be with another, or be in a meeting, or be in an interview, or be at a talk where I'm talking or listening, my whole biological field is affecting everybody around me. I could be at a protest, I could be at a council meeting, I could be at a business meeting, I could be with my wife or my daughter or my dog. If I am self-referencing myself and soothing myself and continuously checking in with my comfort and safety, I am affecting everybody around me. And in truth, if we want to talk business, I'm able to get what I need. And of course, that power gives me a lot of responsibility to be ethical and to be very careful about manipulation, because the practices we're talking about can be manipulated. They're used by the best salespeople, ethical and unethical. So yeah, that's thank you for asking that, Danielle.
Can I say one more thing? I mean, that's fantastic, Fred. And I think some of this has to also do with authentic presence that is born out of this.
Very much so, yeah.
Very much. Yeah. It's magnetic. And then we're also, when we're calm with ourselves at first, which I wouldn't have been able to sit with myself before I met Fred, and then taking it further, you know, it's being able to attune to people. You know, am I being too much? Ooh, maybe that's really the way I am, and that's authentic. But maybe in this situation, let me bring it back a little bit so that we can blend. You know, because now we're also in a very collaborative world. So this is really like every single thing that we're talking about here is, you know, about subtle power and presence and congruence and self-care, connection. And lost my train of thought here, so that means I'm done.
I wanted to bring up, sorry, Kim, did you want to comment on?
I just add one word, but I can do it later.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to what Alyse said and say intentionality. That's what it feels like to me.
Yes.
And I want to just say that I see Lotem, I experience Lotem doing what we're talking about all the time. I'm wondering how you do that, Lotem.
Yeah.
That's my experience of you.
Yeah.
So what comes to me of why I do these practices and what it serves for me is a form of self-care. And I know that when I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm not able to be as much of an active participant or serve in the ways that I would want to. So all the things that I do, which vary from yoga to going in nature to writing to different forms that I find that I need at different times, which is one of the benefits of these practices, whether it's any of who's here work, it's getting to know back to the getting to know ourselves. So how's my energy level? What are my thoughts today? What are my emotions today or in this moment? Because that can change later on. And then from that awareness, then I know how to take care of myself more. And then that will seep into whatever I do in the world as an active participant. Because I really feel that's what all these practices are. It's finding that in ourselves while we're doing them, we're practicing them, and then implementing them as practical tools in our life. And it really starts to become an integral part of how we live in the world. It's like a muscle that needs to be built over time. And then it kind of naturally starts to come in, and it starts with taking the time, which sometimes is counterintuitive, to take a pause when we have a million things to do. And, you know, we want to rush and be efficient. And so it's counterintuitive to pause in those moments, though really we can be more compassionate, more present, more connected to what we're doing and do a better job at it when we do take these moments to do whatever you choose to do, whatever modality. And I find that that's one of the most important things, is this self-care. And I've heard people say, oh, that's selfish to do those practices. Of course, everything in moderation, but to find something every single day to connect with yourself is actually, I feel, one of the least selfish things and one of the best ways to help humanity.
I love that, Lotem. Thank you. Anna, did you, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, well, Lotem said it where she was saying, you know, from that place of groundedness, it sounds counterintuitive to take time, but how many times have we struggled with something? Like I know Daniel with programming, me with writing, we can spend hours just freaking out about it and just spinning. But then if we go take a shower or do a stretch or do something else, get out of that one part of the thinking brain into our parasympathetic nervous system, then it's like, oh, here you go, you know, 5 minutes and it's done. So it is, these classes are self-leadership so that you can go out and be the best leader to others. But really it's finding sometimes, oh, we don't have time, and we're just running around and years go by and you're still running and maybe not doing what you want to do. So these are tools to really, you know, the doing it part, you know, is what I think all leaders want is the action, but sometimes we get stuck in the mire of, you know, not being able to take the right action. So, and then I also wanted to add, for example, this past week or last week, I mentioned to Alyse, you know, sometimes I get on the phone with a certain somebody and then afterwards I'm just not in the right mood. And, but the last time that happened, I didn't do that habitual pattern of kind of just sitting and letting the thoughts go. I got up and I did some energy management movements that Alyse has been teaching, and I went on with my day, and I didn't let, you know, those thought patterns that would take me to inaction lead the way. So it is just breaking up and, yeah, anyway, but I think I'm complete with
And
that.
you know, it's like inserting these, somebody, a couple of times when we've done classes, people go, how many minutes are required? You know, and I got a little cooped up yesterday at lunch. Someone goes, if it's 2 seconds, what can I do? And, you know, sometimes that's a great start. If you know, everything starts with microscopic steps. If you're just knowing and you can do something different, that's great. But thinking is overrated. That's what I'm having a sense of humor. I hope you understand that when I'm saying that thinking's so overrated, because the diminishing returns that you mentioned become, it's pointless. You can stay on it even more and like take a drive, like you said, take a shower, hum, you know, bang a drum, play a song that you love and just dance for 3 minutes. And all of a sudden everything changes. There's the answer. But we don't have enough practice of doing that to see that it is beautiful to have long practices. And it's also imperative to have short quickies, you know, those kind of things that you can grab to get into that other part of your brain so you stop thinking for a second, because it's very noisy in there.
This is fascinating to me. So I think I'm like learning so much. We've only been doing this for just a little bit. So have y'all ever heard of, I'm sure you have, it's like very corporate speak, but the term of circling back. So I'm a millennial, okay? I'm against the corporate speak. I want to say like the cool slang, like I want to be the cool kid at school and at work, right? But actually the idea of circling back, I just kind of connected it to what y'all were talking about, is that small pause. It's not just about running out of time. It's about being intentional and saying, I'm in a tough conversation. I'm being triggered by my boss, my coworker, my whatever, my partner, and saying, let's circle back on this, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm realizing it's not just corporate speak. It can actually be used in a really intentional way. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
really cool
absolutely.
insight. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the power of slow is a lot of what we're talking about. For me personally, when I've when I need to make a change, it's a process of slowing down, or sometimes I slow down and I find a change that I need to make. And Fred, a lot of times I'll come into a session with Fred and I'll be talking, or I'll be talking and gesticulating, and he'll say to do that slow. Say that again, do it again, but do it slow. Could you talk about that, Fred, and how you came to that, or how you find that helpful?
Well, first, though, it's coming to me very strongly right now how I think maybe Lotem used the term counterintuitive. The world around us can be, and recently, if we watch news footage, so violent. There's so many reasons to be hyper aware and on guard, armored. And there's so much counterintuition to the kinds of practices that the four of us and more offer in the world. It is about allowing softening, allowing smaller motions, for instance, or slower. Those qualities are not what we were brought up being rewarded for. Slow at work usually does not bring you more money. Softer in a relationship does not normally bring you we're brought up in a violent culture, and it's showing its ugly head right now. And I think, and again, I want to bring Brene Brown being such a spokeswoman for this, vulnerability or the softness. We're talking about love, essentially. I just want to go to the end and just say it. There's violence and there's love. And for any of us to be courageous enough to pause, or to take a few moments of stillness, or to just, as Daniel was saying, I'm just feeling my hand and I'm just swiping it slowly across. If I feel that and start to slow down, I can feel my shoulders melting. I can feel my belly all of a sudden. I can feel breath in my belly. As soon as we do any motion slower, we're regulating our nervous system. We're regulating our heart rate. We're regulating our breath. And all of these biological mechanisms we share with every other living being on earth, but it takes us back to our power and our ability to retain a sense of calmness in a storm, our ability to return to restoration when the deadlines are hot and heavy. What we're talking about right now, not to be too dramatic, is life and death, that we all have some kind of practice where we can slow down. Because, for years and years and years and years, we know that heart stuff is what kills Americans, stroke and heart stuff. Slowing down it's nothing new, but it's more essential now than ever.
Yeah, and what I found when you've had me do that is it also, and that's part of everything you just said, but just very specifically, it helps me become aware of those racing thoughts or the movement. So now I'll use that. I might do that myself when I feel like a little sped up about something, and then it helps me become aware a little earlier the next time, each time I practice this. Anna, I know you wanted to say something. You're muted, I believe. And by the way, we're gonna open it up to questions soon, so start putting them in the chat if you have a question. Or if you'd like to even just raise your hand in the chat, and then we can call on you if you want to speak.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on vulnerability and slowing down and love. And we had an interesting conversation yesterday in our art and tech panel about empathy and Daniel's work. He's an artist as well as a technologist, and his paintings, which you see behind me, are all about the importance of feelings, So when we slow down, sometimes feelings come up. And sometimes those feelings are the feelings that we don't want to feel because we got a million things to do, or we don't want to feel because they're so painful. And it's that, Peter Gabriel song where there's, he's been afraid of this monster, and then he chooses to, Daniel knows the lyrics, but then he finally looks at the monster and it's a baby boy, and
it's him.
it's him. And so it's hard work, the vulnerability, it's scary work, but it's important work, because without empathy, the conversation was about empathy, and why don't people have empathy? Like kids are being taught empathy in schools because it's not like a natural thing where it should be totally natural. It is natural, but in our society, it has, we've been told, and what I shared, I was taught feelings were not important. So when you're taught feelings aren't important, then what happens to empathy and the disconnect with our humanity. So I just wanted to add that, and now we can open up to Q&A unless anyone wants to make another comment. Or
Can I say one thing? It's not, I really love what
Absolutely.
you said, but I wanted to just call out before we got to Q&A. There are two women, Pat and Joan, who are showing their faces, their beautiful faces to us today, along with the panelists. And I just wanted to call that out. I believe good leaders excavate the unsaid. And there are a lot of y'all on here, and I hope y'all are engaged and enjoying this, but thank you for showing up with us today.
I just want to express my gratitude in this circle of primarily women to be a man amongst you. And I want to name the fact, and Anna and I have talked about this a lot, that women leadership is what is and will make the changes that are necessary right now. And that it's not a coincidence that women biologically have some access to empathy and softness and vulnerability in a different way than men do. So I want to say that I am certain that women are and will be making the changes that are necessary. Primarily, I'm here with you. A lot of good men are, but thank you for being women leaders.
Yeah, and I, as the other white male on the panel, I concur.
Cheers.
100%. So Pat has a question, and Pat says, this reminds me of mindful cooking and eating. What do you think about being mindful when doing mundane tasks? Great question, Pat. Anyone feel free to jump in. Okay, I'll call on someone. Fred, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, mindfulness is about everything. It includes everything, and it doesn't have to be a formal practice. It can be a 24-hour practice. If you're really slick, you can start to be mindful in your dream time, if you really want to get serious about this stuff. So
Yeah.
I would say that it's the best way is to chop wood, carry water, do all of it mindfully. Yes, yes, yes to cooking and eating.
Yeah, yeah. Lotem, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything Fred just said. And sometimes I find, because I have so many practices that I do, but sometimes I find the ones that are the most grounding is just washing my dishes or cleaning my room, even though that's the last thing I want to do in those moments that I'm going through something difficult. I've found those are the initial stepping stones to just getting back into myself, and then including the mindfulness and paying attention and whatever it is, or listening to music and dancing around the kitchen, as Fred would encourage. But yeah, and slowing down while eating and cooking is something I've worked on. I was working with an Ayurveda, which stems from it's a life science of India. And I used to drive all over LA teaching, which has been one of the benefits for me of this time of slowing down, and for a lot of people that I've talked to. And I used to just eat in my car and, you know, just get whatever was around. And she really helped me find that my nervous system was always on this high intensity. So even just eating slower or cooking, these can be really nourishing practices.
Yeah, and you know, you bring up in your classes a lot rest and digest too. And so could you talk about that a little? Because I'm finding that really helpful. Because like you said, when I'm eating at my desk or on the run or whatever, now because I've been hearing that so much, I'm paying more attention and taking more space for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the world is often in the fight, flight, or freeze. And that's part of why we're seeing all of these huge events happening in our world, is because we've been living in this guarded place of needing to protect ourselves all the time and from fear. So all these practices are meant to get us into the rest and digest and downregulate the nervous system and the heart and the breath. And then when we're living from that place of being able to trust ourselves and each other, then we're bound to form a totally different way of living and being in the world.
Yeah, and I think in one of our earlier, in the session, Anna mentioned that Dr. Maher did. She mentioned that a lot of the stuff we're doing, I know that I'm doing as a programmer, I imagine a lot of our audience is doing, is in that other part of the brain. And so that's part of why the switching back and forth or moving out for a second, it's like taking a step outside, helps us reconnect with the other part, you know, and figure out those solutions to the things that I know for me, I've been working, you know, pounding my head against the keyboard, trying to figure out.
Yeah. One more thing.
Yeah.
Going on what Fred said about this being a women's leadership group, I really feel, speaking of the brains, there's the left and the right, and the feminine and the masculine, as what it's known in the different Eastern traditions. So we're wanting to get more into the hemisphere that is more empathetic and calm and balanced and nurturing. And we, of course, want both, but I feel, have been living in that other side, that very active, solar, moving forward, pushing ourselves side. So we need the balance. And I really do feel that having more women leaders and living in that feminine, which we all have feminine inside of us, in that part of the brain, can be extremely healing.
Yeah. Keep the questions coming, and while you do, we will continue to ask some other questions. Kim, maybe you could talk. Oh, no, I was going to actually ask you something, but if you have something to say, go ahead.
Sorry, there was a question from Emma, like a little bit.
Oh,
back.
I didn't see. Okay.
Well, I think we answered it maybe in passing, but I wanted to address it further if possible.
Yes.
She asked, how do we find these moments in public spaces like the office? And that's when we were talking about mindfulness and internal reflection and all of that. What came to mind for me immediately was boundaries, and specifically, I talk a lot about boundaries with yourself, you know, personally, which again bleeds into work, but specifically a practice that I help others with, and one that I'm even struggling to get my own partner to do, is blocking time for yourself on your work calendars ahead of time. And when I was still working in corporate, I would do it on Friday. I would look to my next week, or whenever, you know, whatever the pattern was, I would block out either 1 hour blocks, and I would call it maker's time or like thinking time or something like that, and really holding strong to those boundaries. You know, if you find yourself eating at your desk and not being able to get out and take a walk or go to the gym during the day, I find that, again, it's a more external practice. It's not as internal, but I think it does sort of lead into all of the good internal things that we're talking about. So hopefully, Emma, that helps.
Could I ask
Yeah,
a follow-up question, if that's all right?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Emma.
Please.
Thank you
Hi,
so much
Emma.
for addressing that, Kim. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I was kind of thinking along the lines of when you're, you know, maybe in the office and you'd kind of like to get away if you didn't want to stay at your desk and, you know, have a moment of silence or kind of ground yourself. And yeah, maybe you couldn't go out to have a walk or something. I know some offices are starting to implement like a wellness room or something like that. I don't know if you have any other tips, like going into like a unbooked meeting room or something, just to like have some time by yourself, right? To like change up the scenery a little.
Yeah, I've totally done that. I've done the meeting room thing. I even had, if you have the capacity to do it, I met up with the facilities people and we called it an agile room, but it wasn't really an agile room. It was like we took the lights out, we had a lamp in there and like, you know, big fluffy chairs, and you could just go in there whenever you wanted. It wasn't like a reservation thing, but that was just, again, it was like almost a closet. So being creative, but I'd love to hear other suggestions too.
Yeah, Alyse, I know you have some good tips for some quickie things, some quickie moves.
Thank
right?
you. I mean, one of the things that absolutely won't classify you as a weirdo, because, you know, making loud noises and grunting, even though that's fun and it's good to make audible sounds, may not work. But even just taking the lead on this and doing a walk and talk meeting, that if somebody wants to meet with you, get out of the building, they will appreciate it, and just walk around the block, because you're, I love the efficiencies of 2 for 1. So you're taking a walk and you're breathing and you're talking and all of that. So that's one thing. The other part is you can begin tapping. Nobody's going to see you do that. Just some subtle things over here, right? Just to open up. For those of you who have been in my classes, we trace the lines of our body. It's like having some espresso, you know, real quick. You can do some things like that. You know, if you have, no one has offices anymore, but I mean, you can just sit and touch your head and just bring yourself down. You know, there's a few things that you can do, but you know, there's power in groups. And the nice thing is that I have this fantasy for years that we would be in positive collusion with others in our organization, to just when we would say how hard we worked, you know, that somebody would say, hey, I took a 5-minute nap in my car at lunch, and everybody would applaud, you know. So that hasn't quite happened yet, but I think it's coming, because one of the things I wanted to add on, and I made a note of, is it's not just slowing down for me, because I'm probably started off AAA, you know, like a AA battery. And I really never learned pacing. And so it's very important to be able to pace yourself. You know, we in America are habituated for competition and pushing through, so we're not in touch. But the other part is that as women, we also overextend ourselves like crazy. Not just your date book or all of that, but I mean, just in how we go about doing things, right? So a nice thing that you can do even at the office is notice, you know, am I really intense? Can I dial that back? So these are a few things that just can get you. Oh, one other. Notice what you're noticing. That's what the mindful thing is. Just notice what I'm noticing. And then you can adjust or not. That's it for now.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
That's
thank
great.
you in your office, right? Just want to say that people will thank you in your office, because if you're doing the breath and you're doing the tapping and you're doing some of that, and they notice that you have made a little bit of a shift and go, wow, you're not flipping out as much, what are you doing? It opens up the conversation. Oh, I'm doing something now. Oh, can you show me? Heck yes. We need to be leaders in that realm too. That's what's so exciting about this.
Yeah. Fred, do you have a suggestion along those lines?
I like the word. I like the Ninja Turtles when they were around. And I like to be a Ninja Turtle. I like to think that I'm self-sufficient. So if I'm in an office and I'm not in a position to designate a room or to explicitly give people permission to leave and be in a separate room, the most significant movement for me turns out to be the movement that's occurring below the surface of my skin. So I could look like I'm attentive to the screen or to something on my desk, but really, as Alyse was saying, just the act, if you're on a keyboard, of softening how you're on the keyboard, the act of allowing the spine to find a slightly different alignment becomes a radical act of mindfulness and of physical self-soothing. So if you don't have a supportive environment or someplace that you can go and be private, we have infinite space inside of our own bodies. And just a little bit of bringing the attention into that space and to notice what you're noticing, as Alyse just said brilliantly. Notice the feelings, notice the sensations, notice your thoughts. Immediate relief in my mind. The pattern's broken of that building stress or need for restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's just see what time it is. Okay, we've got 8 more minutes. If there's any other questions, keep them coming and we'll continue that talk. Do you want to say something, Anna? Yes.
Yeah, so Emma or whoever else, if you are all WITI members, invite your teammates to take a class with you in the WITI Wellbeing Center. Like Alyse said, groups, and when we do things together, and then afterwards, it ends at a certain time, but then we hang out and we talk and chat about whatever, having to do with the work most of the time. So that might be something that, you can get other team members doing with you.
Yeah, and in that regard, if they're not WITI members and you want to bring someone along, we can always arrange that, get you a promo code or something. Yeah. Kim, could you talk about agility?
Yeah, sure. Agility, it comes from software development, and it also is like what quick antelopes do when they run through the, so there's kind of the idea of responding to change iteratively and quickly. The best way I describe it to others is, especially in a work setting, is instead of you asking me for something in January and then I deliver it to you in December and you didn't need it, 6 months ago, or you changed your mind 6 months ago and I wasted all that time and your time and money and effort. It's regular check-ins. So if you've worked on teams that operate in sprints, that's what that looks like. It could be every 2 weeks. You just check in. Are we on the right track? Do we have what we need? And really just that iterative nature, which I did hear that theme come up a little bit in our discussions today, which I found interesting.
Very much so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think all of our panelists deal in that in a way, because if it's not in the work environment, it's checking in with ourselves and constantly adjusting to where we're at. I was I do both now, but I started painting 10 years ago, and now I have gallery shows and I've been in museums, and that came from slowing down before, there's sort of a back and forth is what I'm hearing between slowing down and speeding up, incremental changes, new iterations.
Yeah. One thing that also you sparked in me is the idea that a lot of times as leaders or individuals, we think that a decision that we have to make it feels monumental. When you make that decision, it's forever. And when I approach things from a more iterative mind, and I say things like safe to try. It's safe to try right now. And if it doesn't work for me, then I'll just change it later. And I think that's something that I definitely didn't grow up knowing that was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I wrote that down, safe to try. I have a sign here that says, I create a safe space in my, I'll share. I create a safe space in myself.
Love that.
So yes, creating space and giving time to listen to your body. I like I know it spoke to me when someone said, you know, your 85% of your body, if not 90% of your body is silent. Like this is the only part that makes noise, really. Well, kind of. But it's our duty to ourselves to listen to our bodies. And so and that is the intention, and that's the awareness that we are bringing to the Wellbeing Center and to all of the classes we offer. We're going to have Alyse do a couple of minutes of Qigong to get us to transition from here to the next things you have to do. I just want to mention, I forgot to mention the upcoming panel on, solo session with Kim Linton is going to be on July 17th, so Friday, July 17th. And Alyse, did you have something to say? Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Okay. So, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we can do, before everyone, has to leave, let's go ahead and do some Qigong with Alyse. Is that good with you, Daniel?
It sounds good.
I'm going to put a link to the Wellbeing Center in the chat. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah, save the chat. You'll have all the comments and links. Thank you, guys. I think this was a really good conversation. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Come join our classes. Tonight with Lotem, you'll get to experience a great, great class. It is easy yoga. Anyone can do it. And now let's spotlight Alyse and do some...
Okay, it's hard to do this in heels. I'm gonna... Okay, y'all see me good? My feet?
Perfect.
You might as well leave the heels on, because then you could see you could do this no matter what. It answers that. So we all need to be our own, calmer in chief, if you're a boss or So transitions are super important, and we're gonna take our hands out and we're gonna clear this, because you got everything you needed from this moment together, and this is just gonna symbolize that we're moving along. It also helps cross the hemisphere, which is good. Your brain's gonna be good. So you're gonna take one hand in front like you're tossing a ball, and the other one's gonna go behind you. It just looks like this. We're inhaling up. Exhale down. And so just allowing your arms to go along from the ride, and the movement is coming from the strength of your core, from the center of your body, from your waist and your hips. And with each time, as if you're tossing that ball, imagine that you're sending any thoughts that aren't helpful at this moment off to the side. And so this is something that you can do rather quickly, just to clear out. Let's say you've had a toxic conversation, or you've watched too much news and you will get clear. You can do this. All right, this is the speed version because we only have 2 minutes, but just get into this, allow yourself to feel strong in the legs, all 4 corners of the feet, and breath. And now we're going to just slow down, just slow down, just slow down. Come back to center. Just notice if you're not feeling a little bit like more breath. And now we're going to just do another thing that you can do to get ready for your sessions and optimize your brain as well. We're going to cross the midline here. So you can mirror me, and you're going to take that hand, come across, up over your head, and then you're going to move from that center right about here. You're going to allow the hand to fall off the wrist, and then you're just going to float the hand down. Again, now you're picking up nice grounded earthy energy, coming back to the center, pouring that down. One more, inhale, as if you're gathering up sunlight and good energy, good mojo, allowing that to come down through the center of your being, raising the eyes so that you're paying attention to the palm. Inhaling again, back to the center. So we're working with opposition here. We're feeling strong, like deeply rooted, like a tree. Imagine your spine is part of a tree trunk. And that fluidity in the hand and so forth. Now bring that arm down, just pause. Now we're going to repeat on the other side. Inhaling, nice, long, slow, deep. Drop the wrist, float on down. Move from the center. Pour down. So inhaling that you're receptive to what's going to come today. And as you're going downwards, just letting go of anything that doesn't serve you right now. You might be, nothing matters but what we're doing right now. Just drop anything. Again, maybe something that's been weighing on your mind. And again, inhale curiosity. Exhale what doesn't serve you. Inhale, strong and healthy. Exhale. You name it. We're going to do one more. And then just drop down. Bring the hands right to the center. We're going to stir 3 times, like we're stirring in that good energy that we just moved around. And then just take a pause. We're going to make a fist with one hand, and then we're going to take the other hand like so, just to remind us that softness and strength equal wholeness, and that's what we want. So go forth and take energy to your next session. And was that 2 minutes, just to be sure?
Perfect.
I'm not sure, but it was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very
you
much.
so much.
We hope to see you in some classes soon.
Yes.
And to all the panelists, look, there's some nice comments in the chat. One of which is from the founder of WITI, who happens to be my mom, too. Anyway, there's, everyone seemed to really enjoy it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Enjoy the rest of the summit.
Yeah, and don't forget, Lotem is teaching at 4 today. So you can find that on the main agenda. Yeah. Oh, great. All sorts of great comments.